Okay, so this is my tutorial for Assignment 2, CG225. Just in case anyone missed what we were supposed to do during class. The main idea of this assignment is to figure out how to make objects from reference images and follow like their silhouette and everything. The first step would be to make an eraser, which I believe everyone did in class. It's fairly simple. You just have a cube, rectangle. Hold on. Let me restart so I can say exactly what buttons I'm pressing. So y'all know how to create a cube from up there, and R to scale. Then hold right click, face, go to component selection mode, and then slide it over to be eraser shaped. Then we're going to do the same and select all the edges, and we're going to bevel it. This is basically your way to figure out how the bevel tool works. There are a ton of different options for it. You can pretty much figure out what they all do just by turning them off and on. Yeah, I'm just going to set that to 3. Okay. So the eraser is super simple. It's already done. I'm going to move it to the side so I can start working on the paint tube in the middle. But before I do that, I want to set the project folder. So how do we do that? We go to File, and there's just something down here that says Set Project. You'll want to just find any folder that you've created. I made one earlier for the sake of this demo, just called my demo folder. And I'm going to go into this and set it as my directory. And yeah, I'll create a default workspace. So if you were to, say, have your project folder on a flash drive, then all of your source images for your textures and everything, you could save to that project folder, and you would just have to, whenever you like take that flash drive and put it on a new computer, you can just tell Maya to look for the location of that folder on your flash drive as the project folder. Then all of your textures and everything should link up to your materials in your scene. Okay, now getting the paint tube. So I'm pressing the space bar, just tapping it to go into the 4-panel view. I'm going to go to the front view here. I'm just tapping spacebar again to zoom in on this front orthographic view. Actually, I want to slide my eraser over to the side again. And to import a reference image, while you're in any of the orthographic view planes, I'm going to front just because this way it'll be vertical when I import it. At the top left corner of your viewport, this view button has an option for an image plane import. I'm going to grab the paintbrush or paint tube, and then this just imports the JPEG into your scene as an object. It works like anything else would. You can scale it, you can rotate it, and translate it and everything. Only thing is it doesn't have like geometry to it. I'm gonna move this eraser back to the middle. I'm moving it here away from the center so that when I'm making my paint tube here in the center of the scene, it's not overlapping with the reference image. So for it, I'm just going to start with a cylinder. And since I wanted to align the... Oh, actually, I want to have that paint tube at the other side of the scene. Excuse me. Here we go. I like to be very precise and symmetrical with my modeling with this sort of method. So I'm aligning the bottom of the paint tube image with the 0 line. I'm just estimating. If you want to move your cylinder or any other object to an exact point on the plane, while you're translating, you can hold down the X key. You'll see it highlights this button up here, which is Snap to Grid. There are other ones like Snap to Curve and Vertex as well, depending on which button you hold. X, C, or V. But for now, I'm just using X to snap it to the grid. And in order to get the excuse me, silhouette of this cylinder to follow the shape of this paint tube, I'm going to go to edge selection mode. I'm going to double click. I'm just showing it here in perspective as well as in sideways. I'm going to double click this ring around the top part of the cylinder and then just move it up. And then I can also use a scale tool. Oh wait, hold on. I messed something up. I don't actually want to do it with just the edge. I want to select all these vertices because there's this thing in the middle. Actually, let me just get rid of these faces on the top and bottom of the cylinder. To do what I'm doing here, paint select, you hold down the tab key while you're just in the regular selection mode. And you can click and drag over all of your faces and press delete to delete them. Okay. Now I want to go to edge selection mode rather than faces. And I want to move this ring here to, about where it is at the top of the paint tube, and then scale it inwards to match the profile of the object I'm modeling off of. Okay, now to get the next step, make a new segment of our cylinder. There are two ways to extrude a piece of geometry. You can either press the Control E key combination, and then that just makes an extrusion for you automatically. It's very precise, very reliable to do it that way. Another way to do it would be to hold down the translate key and shift. And this is just like a quick extrude. It will not be as pretty as doing it with the Control E method. But if you know what you're doing and you want to be fast, then you can do that instead. But for now, since I want to keep the smooth appearance of the rest of the geometry, I'm just going to use this method. And once again, follow the rest of the geometry. Alright. And then we're just going to do that a few more times, making extrusions and scaling it to match our profile with the rest of the paint tube. Situation like this might be where you'd want to just use the other scale method. So apart from translating, you can also extrude by just scaling something out. It's a little hard to see in the front plane, but if you go here to the perspective plane, whoop, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Scaling it outward so that we can match this top part of the cap. Now I'm going to extrude it this way, upwards. Right, Control E, going out. Again, Control E, going up, in a little bit. Control E, going in some more. You all know what these paint tubes should look like after doing Art 130 and everything for so long. Alright, Control E, scale it in, down. And now for filling this hole and keeping it as quads. There are a few ways to do it. The most reliable way to do it would be to select one of these edges, hold Shift and right click, and then this option here. Yeah, holding Shift and right click, and then release right click over this button, Fill Hole. Only issue is this creates like a 20-sided n-gon, which is absolutely terrible for your edge flow. It'll be very hard to manipulate. But you can fix that by just taking the multi-cut tool from up here and drawing lines across the top from dot to dot. And you would want to do them all going in the same direction. So I'm going to go ahead and do all that. And we're going to be left with triangles on the very ends here. To finish making a cut after clicking from point to point, you want the easiest way to do it. You can either press Enter or just right click somewhere. You can right click really anywhere to finish the cut. Do be careful with the multi-cut tool. Sometimes if you click off of the object and then on somewhere else and not actually on a point, and then you right click, you'll actually just cut your entire model in half. So you can just Control Z that and undo it. Okay, now for the weird thin part of the bottom of the paint tube. Go back to edge mode. I'm going to double click this ring around the bottom to select it, and then I'm just going to scale it inwards this way. So it's shaped like one of those gouache paint tubes that we love and hate. They're pretty thin at the bottom, so I'll do it like that. Oh, my roommate is coming home. Hi. I'm making a Devo video right now, so I'm going to be talking to myself. Okay. Where was I? Right. I want to make an edge loop on the surface here. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to grab this ring at the bottom. I'm just going to move it up. And I'm going to extrude it downwards. Whoop. I know how these things are shaped, so I'm going to scale this part in a bit more. Alright, now let's try a different method for filling in this hole here. There's another tool called the bridge tool, which will make a set of quads between like evenly lined up edges. So to only select part of this ring, I'm going to click this one, hold Shift, and then double click from here. So it'll select all of these edges, but nothing elsewhere. I'm going to do the same for the other side, just leaving these two ends at the bottom corners unselected. Let's see if this bridge tool works how it's supposed to. Okay, yeah, that works pretty well. Sometimes if you try to do that and you just like click the whole thing and bridge it, it'll just do the same thing as the fill hole button. But we can cut out some of the steps by doing that. And then I can just, use it as a shortcut for the fill hole. I wouldn't always use it as a fill hole shortcut because it might not work. It might like have the normals pointing the wrong way, like inside instead of outside, but in this case, since the geometry is really even, there weren't any issues with it. Okay, so that's the basic structure of the paint tube all done. Let me check the specs for the triangle count of it. Should be about 600 to 750. And currently I have 584 triangles. No, 396 for this thing, which means I could add a lot more detail to this mesh. Where am I going to do that? One way I could do it is by selecting this edge here. It's pretty thick right now. I think I could use a bevel to round it out a bit. I'm going to decrease the fraction of it so that it's a tighter round. And the way this tapers is very sharp, so I'm going to insert an edge loop, holding shift and right. Whoop, that's not what I want to do. What did I do there? So holding shift and right click while hovered over this object, I can grab the insert edge loop tool. So I'm just going to click on one of these edges. You have to click right on the line. And I'll put one here and one here. Just an estimate for, actually I'll do one more in the middle. Shortcuts are nice to know if you don't want to get carpal tunnel. Now say, I really hate where I put these edge loops. There's actually a really nice tool for just sliding them called Slide Edge Loop. So if you double click this edge loop to get the ring around it, and then hold the middle mouse button, that's your scroll wheel, you can change the position of it. So it's like, I want it to be further down. Okay, now it's more even. All right. Now to get a gradual taper for this thing, I'm going to use the soft select tool by pressing the B key. Whoops. You might notice that the entire thing is yellow when you do that. So the soft select has a fall off to the amount of components that it affects. If you want to change how large the area is that it's using, hold down B and left click and drag. It's like, I just want to affect this area personally. Whoop, that looks pretty bad. Hold on. I'm going to select this part instead. And then this part. And then like gradually move up to make my paint tube a bit more girthy. Okay, now it looks more normal. Like a real paint tube. Let's see, what else can we add since we have a bit more room to have more detail at 600 to 750? Well, there's this part of the paint tube that is not exactly connected, and I just made it look like it's just a flush there. If you want to edit your mesh to get like that look on it, you can grab, I'm just going to marquee select all these faces and then move it up a little bit. Okay. Let's see, how do I want to do this? I think I'm going to do it by inserting an edge loop, and I'm going to insert an edge loop using the multi-cut tool this time. This one is a little tricky to use because if you click in the wrong spot, it might crash your Maya. Just warning you. But if you hold down the control key, then it basically has the same effect as the insert edge loop tool. And you can see a preview of where it will go. If you hold down shift and control, you can snap it to specific percentages along the quads that it's going to create a ring around. I just want to do it right here in the middle. And I'm going to go back to edge selection, scale it in. Okay. And now I'm going to select the rest of these faces up here again. Make sure it's all good and no other thing, because when you do a marquee select, sometimes you just want to select this part of the model, but it'll actually give you everything behind it too. So you can use that to your advantage or to your detriment. In this case, it's very helpful for making this be a little bit more realistic. There we go, 630 tries. That's pretty much perfect for what we want for the paint tube. Alright, now that I'm done with that, I can slide it off to the side. I'm just going to get rid of the image here in the background, and I'm going to save my scene in our demo folder. Since I set the project folder to this one, it'll just automatically direct me here instead of my desktop whenever I try to save. I'm going to name my scene Demo Still Life because that's what I'm doing. And for the paintbrush, you can follow basically the exact same process you did for the paint tube. Let's see here. I'm in the wrong folder. I want this folder. Yeah, there we go. Oh, I probably want the paintbrush to be larger so it makes more sense. And then I think you probably know what to do from here. Just making a cylinder and scaling it. And then grabbing the, whoops, I want to move this out of here. Get out of here. I'm going to grab these vertices, move them up here. And I'm actually going to remove these caps again, because I forgot to do that. Ooh, missed one. And they're gone. And I'm going to, let's say you are super fast and you want to model this like a pro. You can use the shift and drag extrusion option instead of the like Control E. If you want to go super fast and you're impatient, or like, oh no, this doesn't look very much like a paintbrush. Well, you can add more edge loops and just like scale it to taper the right points along the lines of your paintbrush. So some things are thinner than the cylinder I have here. Well, there's an option to be able to see it. To turn on transparent mesh. That's the X-ray button here at the top of the viewport. Everything will be a little hard to see at first because it's just gray, but once you select it, or you can turn on the wireframe unshaded to see it more easily. I'm actually going to take this. What? Can I select that? And make it more centered based on how my model is. That's good. Since I am confident with this knife, I can use it to make all of these cuts in all the right places. I'm going to do one here. I'm going to do one here, and here, and here, and here. I'm going to grab this edge loop just by double clicking it and scaling it. I'm going to grab this one, scale it up to make it a bit fatter up here. I'm going to grab this edge loop, scale it in so we have a nice taper going on. I'm going to grab this one here at the bottom so we get the same like rounded end of that. Then when we go into 3D, we will notice that this is a very fat paintbrush. We don't really want that, obviously. So I'm just going to grab all these faces, then turn on soft selection again. I want it to affect everything down to there. I think it should taper a bit more. down there. I think even a bit more actually. Whoop. Does that look normal? Well, that looks a bit fat and strange for a paintbrush to be. I'm just gonna scale this part. Ooh, I don't want to scale up the box in the middle because that does it in all dimensions. I just want to do it with this green plane so it only does it in those 2 dimensions. Sometimes you don't want it to follow the exact shape of the model you're working from. I'm going to add another edge loop here, actually. I'm going to change the affection area. Affection? That's not the word that I'm looking for. And I'm now going to grab this part and scale it even more in here to make it even flatter. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the bottom of the paint tube earlier and just make a bridge. Shift double click, making sure we're leaving the edges unattended. Now if you get tired of using the same tool over and over and pressing it on the shelf, you can actually just press the G key to repeat using the last tool that you used. It works for pretty much any of these ones up here. Not for anyone that puts you in like a mode per se, like the multi-cut tool or target weld, but it works for bridge and extrude. So I'm going to press G and I'll just do the exact same thing as the default bridge function. And I'm going to do that here at the bottom too. Might seem a bit strange to do it here because it's a circle, but that's okay. I can deselect these parts, press G again, and I'll do the same thing. Just using the bridge tool again. And voila, we have a paintbrush that is very low poly. How much room do we have for more detail? 600 to 750 polygons. Currently, I'm at 436. To turn on this view up here, where is that again? I have to remember where to find that. Because it is in your HUD options. Oh yeah, I think it's under Show HUD. I want to turn it off though. Where would it be? Excuse me. Let me take a drink of water. Yeah, I think it's somewhere here under Show. I just can't read all this list. My paintbrush looks a little bit weird up here. It's not exactly what I want it to look like. All these edges need to be in smooth shading mode. So I'm just going to select them all. So I want to make sure I get all of them. Hold Shift and right click, and then here under Soften Harden Edge, I'm just going to do Soften Edge. Now I look back at it, it'll look normal again. Something here looks a bit different than it does on my paintbrush, so I'm going to start here for adding more detail around the base of this metal portion. I think around from this area up to here, everything is a bit thicker because it's the metal part. So I'm just going to select all of... if you want to select everything in a line, then just like click one of these faces, hold Shift and double click the one next to it, and it will do everything going like up and down or side to side around the object as long as you have clean edge flow. If you're missing one of these, like say I accidentally deleted it, It'll still work. Just obviously whatever's missing won't be there. Or I can just do holding shift and doing a marquee select. I can accomplish the same effect. I'm going to press Ctrl E to extrude all of this. I'm going to use this blue one to just pull it all out a little bit to make it thicker. And to get the kind of bumpy portion here on the paintbrush, I'm going to double click and select this edge loop area. I'm going to do the same thing I just did. Now, this blue arrow has, sometimes it's weird and works like that. Sometimes, if it doesn't go in the direction you expect it to do, you can also use the thickness slider here. It's a bit more dramatic than I would like it to be, so I'm just going to change it down manually to 0.01. Does that look like a paintbrush? More or less. I want to scale this part in a little bit, though. And actually move it up as well a tiny bit. Let me shrink it down. This part here of the paintbrush should be a lot thinner. I think I can make the bristles more rounded as well, honestly. I'm just going to slide this one down. Make sure I double click to select it all. How many triangles are we at now? We're at 636. Okay. We have a little bit more room, so I can add some more detail. I'm going to do some here along this edge at the bottom. Whoops, not what I wanted. I'm just going to do a bevel. And it's very particular about how much room it wants to give me. So I can just increase that to, say, 5 to look more how I was imagining it would turn out. I'm going to increase the segments to 2. There, now it's very round. And that added just like 60 more polygons alone. Alright. And those will be your 3 objects. Now if you want to add materials to certain parts of your object, then similar to holding right click, going down, and adding one of your favorite materials, whatever, you can just do that by selecting some of the faces that are present. Actually, I want to get under here as well. And you can just add additional material to it. So there will be 2 different materials on this object, like 1 and 2 by default are the numbers. Make this part white. I'm actually going to delete my type history so that all the stuff up here goes away. Once you delete by type history, you can't Control Z your object anymore. Delete by type history, delete by type history. That just like frees up a room and memory for your object stuff. Deleting by type history. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to save this scene as Demo Still Life 02. I think you have the freedom and idea of what to do with adding materials. If you want to have quick access to the AI standard surface material when you are going to assign a new material and this menu pops up, make sure you have nothing typed in this box, or else nothing might show up. Like if I hit the spacebar bunch, nothing appears because it's searching for a material named nothing, nothing, nothing. But here under the Arnold Shader tab, this one here, AI Standard Surface, is going to be the one you're going to use more than anything else. So I recommend right-clicking it and adding it to your favorites, so that whenever you go to add a favorite material, add a new material, you can just do this right here, and you don't have to do all those extra button presses. Like, you can mess around with the colors and everything, but the most important ones to pay attention to in the sliders are color, obviously. You can make that be literally whatever you want. Diffuse roughness is different from specular roughness. I wouldn't touch diffuse roughness at all. I would just only mess with specular roughness. The difference between no roughness and high roughness is how shiny something is. Like, think of just like really shiny plastic versus really like rough and dull plastic. Then metalness is like how reflective it is, like as a mirror. It's like a tin can is a lot more reflective than like a rusty tin can. So something that is not very metallic will be only a little bit reflective, while something that is completely metallic is like almost a clear mirror. And you can have that mirror be as rough or smooth as you want. We're not going to get into any of the other material parameters yet, but there are a ton down here, and, well, you just don't have to worry about them yet. Just worry about color, base metalness, and specular roughness for now, when you're trying to get your materials to look like how they do in real life. And if you want to preview how they do look in real life, I'm just going to create a Arnold sky dome so that there's some ambient lighting. You can pull up the Arnold renderer, just like it changes your, while you hit this red play button, it will turn your viewport into an Arnold renderer. I'm just going to dock it up here because that's what I like to do on top of my attribute editor. Ooh, it's really tall for some reason. You can just hit that button. It'll make your computer want to die, but you can just look at it really quickly to make sure that your Arnold materials look how they're supposed to. Like, I can go into the standard surface here and make this one super metallic so that it reflects the eraser perfectly. Or I can make it super rough and it will make the reflection be really messy and like spill out all over it. Alright, that is about, I just realized I forgot to clock in. Well, that's what I have for this demo. If you have any questions, message me on Teams. Alright.